In December 1999, a letter arrived at the offices of a newspaper in Lahore, Pakistan. The words written inside would send shockwaves through an entire nation. A man named Javed Iqbal confessed to something unthinkable. 100 children, 100 innocent lives, all taken in the span of just 6 months. He didn't hide. He didn't run. Instead, he walked through the doors of that newspaper office and calmly explained what he had done. The bodies had been dissolved in acid, the evidence carefully destroyed, and his reason? Revenge. This is the story of Pakistan's most notorious serial killer, a man who preyed on the forgotten children of Lahore streets. A case so dark, so disturbing, that even now, decades later, the questions still haunt us. How could this happen? And why did nobody notice until it was too late? This is the story of Javed Iqbal. Our story begins in the bustling city of Lahore. The year is 1998. The streets are alive with noise, color, and chaos. Vendors call out to customers. Children play in dusty alleyways. And in the heart of it all, in a neighborhood called Shadbag, lived a man who would soon become a monster. Javed Iqbal Mughal was born in 1961 into a comfortable, middle-class family. His father was a successful businessman who owned a steel recasting company. Javed was the 6th of 8 children, growing up in relative privilege compared to most Pakistani families at the time. He attended government Islamia College as an intermediate student and seemed, at least on the surface, like any other young man trying to make his way in the world. But beneath that ordinary exterior, something was already wrong. By 1978, while still a student, Javed had started his own steel recasting business. His father, wanting to support his son, purchased 2 villas in the Shadbag area of Lahore. One house became Javed's business. The other became his home. And it was in this home where the horrors would eventually unfold. From early on, there were warning signs. In 1985, complaints were filed against Javed for sodomy. Then again in 1990. Both times, the charges were dropped. Both times, he walked free. The system had failed. But nobody could have predicted just how catastrophic that failure would become. Javed seemed obsessed with young boys. He opened a video game shop in Shadbag, one of the first of its kind in the neighborhood. Children flocked there, eager to play. Javed would offer them tokens at reduced rates. Sometimes, he'd give them tokens for free. He was generous, friendly, trustworthy, but was all a trap. Javed's methods were calculated. He understood that children could be lured with simple things. Games, money, attention. He threw rupee notes on the floor and watched which boys would pick them up. Then he'd accuse them of stealing and demand to search them in a private room. That's when the abuse would happen. Sometimes he'd give the money back afterward as a gesture of goodwill, making the child feel confused, guilty, and ashamed. When parents in the neighborhood started to catch on and kept their children away from the video game shop, Javed adapted. He opened a fish aquarium. When that didn't work, he opened a gym. He even tried opening an air-conditioned school called Sunnyside School. But by then, his reputation had begun to spread. Nobody wanted to send their children near him. So Javed changed his strategy entirely. He began targeting the most vulnerable. Street children, runaways, orphans, boys between the ages of 6 and 16 who had no families to miss them, no parents to file police reports, no one to notice when they disappeared. Lahore streets were filled with such children. Pakistan's economic struggles meant that thousands of boys lived on the streets, begging for food, selling small items, or doing odd jobs just to survive. These children were invisible to society, and Javed knew it. He would approach them with offers of food, shelter, or work. Desperate and hungry, many said yes. They followed him back to his villa in Shadbag, a place they believed would offer them safety. Instead, they found hell. Inside that 3-bedroom villa, Javed Iqbal committed unspeakable acts. He would sexually assault the boys. Then, when he was finished, he would strangle them to death with chains. Their bodies were then dismembered, cut into pieces, But Javed didn't stop there. He kept large vats of hydrochloric acid in the house, acid strong enough to dissolve flesh and bone. He would place the body parts into these vats and wait. Days would pass. The bodies would break down, liquefying into a thick sludge. Then, he would drain the remains into barrels and dump them into the Ravi River, which flows through Lahore. No bodies, no evidence, no crime. Javed kept meticulous records. He photographed many of his victims. He wrote detailed entries in a journal, documenting each murder like a scientist recording an experiment. He collected their clothing, their shoes, their belongings. The walls of his home became a morbid gallery of death. He had accomplices, too, for teenage boys who lived with him in the villa. They helped him lure victims. They helped him dispose of the bodies. Whether they acted out of fear, manipulation, or their own darkness remains unclear. But they were complicit in the horror. Between 1998 and 1999, this nightmare continued. One boy after another. 10 boys. 20. 50. And Javed didn't stop until he reached his goal. 100 children. In December 1999, everything changed. Javed Iqbal sat down and wrote 2 letters. One to the Lahore police, another to Kawar Naeem Hashmi, the chief news editor of a prominent local newspaper called Jang. In those letters, he confessed to everything. He wrote that he had raped and murdered 100 boys. He described how he strangled them, dismembered their bodies, and dissolved them in acid. He explained that his victims were runaways and orphans, children nobody would miss. And then, he stated his intention to drown himself in the Ravi River. His mission, he said, was complete. But Javed didn't drown himself. Instead, on December 30th, 1999, he walked into the offices of the Jang newspaper. He wanted to confess in person. Journalists and police officers listened in stunned silence as this 40-year-old man calmly described the most horrific crimes in Pakistan's history. His tone was nonchalant, almost casual. He showed no remorse, no guilt, no humanity. In one of his final journal entries, Javed had written, "My count has reached 100. He was a handsome 16-year-old boy. He came from Peshawar. With the grace of God, my mission is complete." Tears rolled down my cheeks. But those tears weren't for his victims. They were for himself. Police immediately launched a massive investigation. They raided Javed's villa in Shadbagh, and what they found inside confirmed every nightmarish detail of his confession. Large plastic vats filled with acid, photographs of dozens of young boys, many of whom had been reported missing, blood-stained chains used for strangulation, piles of children's clothing, shoes, personal belongings, everything carefully preserved like trophies. The police tried to identify the victims, but it was nearly impossible. The bodies had been destroyed. The acid had done its job. Only a few could be identified through the photographs and clothing left behind. Javed's 4 accomplices were arrested in a town called Sohawa. Within days, one of them died in police custody. A post-mortem suggested that force had been used against him. The police claimed he had jumped from a window of his own accord. The truth remains unclear. A nationwide manhunt was launched for Javed himself. Pakistan had never seen anything like it. The entire nation was gripped with fear and outrage. How could someone do this? How could so many children disappear without anyone noticing? But Javed didn't run. He surrendered himself. He wanted the world to know what he had done. Why? Why would someone commit such unspeakable evil? According to Javed, the answer was revenge. He claimed that in the early 1990s, the Lahore police had arrested him on allegations related to sodomy. During his detention, he said they beat him so severely that his head was crushed, his backbone broken, and he was left crippled. He claimed he was denied justice, that nobody listened to him, that the system had destroyed him. His mother had been devastated when she learned of the accusations against her son. She cried for him. She suffered because of him. And Javed decided that if his mother cried for him, then 100 mothers should cry for their children. It was a twisted, horrifying logic, a justification born from rage and madness. But even if his story about police brutality was true, nothing could justify what he had done. 100 innocent lives taken because of his hatred for a system that had failed him. In an interview shortly before his arrest, Javed said, "I could have killed 500. This was not a problem. Money was not a problem. But the pledge I had taken was of 100 children, and I never wanted to violate this." He spoke of the murders like a business transaction, a goal achieved, a mission completed. There was no humanity left in him. Javed Iqbal's trial began in February 2000. It was one of the most sensational trials in Pakistan's legal history. The courtroom was packed with journalists, victims' families, and curious onlookers. The nation watched. At first, Javed maintained his confession. He admitted to everything. But as the trial progressed, he suddenly changed his story. He claimed that the confession was fake, that he had made it all up to highlight the plight of street children in Pakistan, that he wanted to draw attention to how easily children could disappear without anyone caring. Nobody believed him. The evidence was overwhelming. The photographs, the clothing, the acid vats, the detailed journals, everything pointed to his guilt. On March 16, 2000, Judge Ala Buksh Ranja delivered the verdict. Javed Iqbal was found guilty of 100 counts of murder and sentenced to death. But the judge didn't stop there. Invoking Islamic law, he declared that Javed would be strangled to death in front of the parents of the children he had killed. Then, his body would be cut into 100 pieces and dissolved in acid, the same way he had killed his victims. It was a sentence that shocked the world. Many called it barbaric, others called it justice. Pakistan's interior minister at the time, Moinuddin Haider, publicly stated that such a punishment could not be carried out. Pakistan was a signatory of the Human Rights Commission, and such methods were not allowed under international law. The sentence would never be executed. On the morning of October 8, 2001, guards at Kot Lakhpat jail in Lahore made a grim discovery. Javed Iqbal and one of his accomplices, 17-year-old Sajid Ahmed, were found dead in their cells. Both had apparently hanged themselves using their own bed sheets. But the circumstances were suspicious. Autopsies revealed that both men had been severely beaten before their deaths. There were signs of torture, bruises, broken bones. It raised immediate questions. Had they really committed suicide? Or had they been murdered? An official inquiry was launched, but it yielded no clear answers. 6 jail officials were suspended, but no charges were ever filed. The truth about what happened that morning remains a mystery. Some believe that Javed was killed by other inmates, or even by prison guards seeking their own form of justice. Others believe that he took his own life to avoid the public execution that awaited him. Javed Iqbal's body went unclaimed. No family came forward to bury him. He was buried in an unmarked grave, forgotten and unmourned. His reign of terror was over, but the questions remained. The case of Javed Iqbal left deep scars on Pakistan. It exposed the vulnerability of street children. It revealed how easily they could be exploited, abused, and murdered without anyone noticing. It highlighted the failures of a system that allowed a known predator to continue operating for years. In the years since, Pakistan has made efforts to improve child protection laws. But the problem persists. Thousands of children still live on the streets, invisible and forgotten, and predators still hunt them. A film was made about Javed Iqbal's crimes in 2023 titled Javed Iqbal, The Untold Story of a Serial Killer. It was so controversial that it was initially banned by the Punjab government. The wounds were still too fresh, the horror too real. Javed Iqbal stands as Pakistan's most prolific serial killer. 100 confirmed victims, 100 families destroyed, 100 lives stolen. But perhaps the most disturbing question of all is this: how many victims were there really? Javed himself said he could have killed 500. He said money was no problem, that he stopped only because he had achieved his goal of 100. What if there were more? What if other bodies were dumped in the Ravi River before he began documenting his crimes? What if there are victims we will never know about? The truth died with Javed Iqbal on that October morning in 2001. And the children of Lahore's streets will never truly be safe until society remembers them, protects them, and refuses to let them be invisible. This is their story. This is the story of Javed Iqbal, a monster who walked among us, a predator who thrived in the shadows, and a reminder that evil doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it hides in plain sight, until it's too late.